Pay attention to the woman standing on this street corner in Escondido. She isn't a detective, she doesn't carry a badge or a warrant. What she carries is the knowledge of exactly what happened here, knowledge that took her 423 days and a walk into a killer's jail cell to obtain. She points to the chain link fences running along both sides of the road. Left side, right side, no gaps, no exit.
Where Amber was taken, and as you can see, there's nowhere for her to run. There's fences on both sides, so she was kind of just stuck here.
Her name is Carrie McGonigal. And this is the corner where her 14-year-old daughter took her last steps as a free person. On a rainy February morning, carrying a check for a baby lamb she'd been waiting a full year to buy. What happened next is a story about two girls who never met, two families who became each other's lifeline, and one morning that changed everything because a stranger drove down the wrong street at the wrong time and one other person drove past and didn't stop. Amber Dubois did not need much from the world. She did not go to the mall, she did not wear makeup, she had a small circle of close friends, a tall stack of books on her nightstand, and an internet browsing history made up almost entirely of articles about animal behavior and marine biology. When she was very small, she had written in her diary,
God made animals because they are nice and cute. I like horses and cats.
By the time she was 14, the handwriting had changed. The ambition had not. Her father, Mo, described her the way only a father can, with a smile that crept in despite everything even years later. She was his sweetheart, the girl who always had a little smirk on her face, who teased him constantly about his receding hairline, who gave him a hard time and then laughed. Her mother, Carrie, used to take her to the mall when she was a baby, come home, change her outfit, and take her back, just so people would tell her how beautiful she was. Because she was, Carrie said, like a perfect little angel. They lived in Escondido, a quiet suburb north of San Diego where the neighborhoods blend into dry hills and the mornings arrive cold and still. Amber was a straight A student at Escondido High School. She had never missed a single day of class in her life, not one. In 8th grade, her agriculture teacher came to the junior high school and told the students they could raise livestock through the Future Farmers program. Amber came home that afternoon and told Carrie she was going to raise a lamb.
Mom, I'm going to raise a lamb, and I get to go to fair, and I get to show this lamb, and, she was just so excited about it.
She was going to take it to the fair. She was going to show it there. She had already picked the name, Nanette. Carrie told her she would have to write a letter explaining how she planned to take care of the animal, that none of it would fall on anyone else. Amber wrote the letter. For a full year, she researched everything she could find. Books piled up on her bedside table, notes filled her journal. And on the morning of February 13th, 2009, the day before Valentine's Day, the check was finally ready. Carrie had written it out the night before. Amber was so excited she could barely eat breakfast. When Carrie left for work that morning, Amber called out from the kitchen.
And she said thank you, and I told her I loved her and I would see her later, and I left for work.
10 miles south, in the suburb of Poway, another family was watching their daughter prepare for a different kind of future. Chelsea King was 17 years old, a high school senior, a cross-country runner who used the morning trail to quiet the pressure of her final year. She had applied to 11 colleges. She loved sunflowers. Her father, Brent, would later describe her as sunshine in human form. She was the kind of girl who trained for half marathons not because anyone asked her to, but because she wanted to accomplish something before she left for college. On the afternoon of February 25th, 2010, almost exactly 1 year after Amber disappeared, Chelsea laced up her running shoes, drove to Rancho Bernardo Community Park, and went for her run. Two girls, same county, same February, same kind of quiet, determined life that no one ever thinks to protect until it is already gone. The morning of February 13th was drizzly and cold. A mother was driving her daughter to school along one of the side streets near Escondido High when she spotted a girl walking alone in the rain. She recognized her. It was Amber, heading to school the way she did every morning, moving through the wet air with her backpack and her check for the lamb folded in her pocket. The mother thought about pulling over. She slowed down. Then her daughter spoke up from the passenger seat.
Her daughter said, "Oh, Mom, it looks like she's talking to a boy. We should leave her alone." So they continued on to school.
They drove on. A few minutes later, John Albert Gardner III turned his car down the same street. He had no plan. He had not come looking for anyone in particular. He would later admit he thought she was older, 16, maybe 17. He preferred girls that age. He had no idea she was 14. He saw her walking alone between the fences, no exits on either side, and he pulled over. Amber looked at him in shock. She asked him if he was kidding. He raised his voice and told her to get in the car. She got in. By 4:30 that afternoon, Amber had not come home. Her stepfather Dave went to the high school to look for her. Her first period teacher told him she had never arrived that morning. Dave called Carrie at work. Carrie didn't need to hear the full sentence. She walked into her boss's office and told him someone had taken her daughter. He told her not to be silly. She told him she was not being silly. Within the hour, 15 people were at her door. They spread through the neighborhood, knocked on every door along the route to school, plastered the streets with flyers. By the next morning, the whole community was outside searching, but Amber had been gone for nearly 9 hours before anyone knew she was missing. And in those 9 hours, whatever trail existed had gone cold. The police spent the first critical days pursuing the wrong theory. They believed Amber had run away. They visited party spots, checked with friends, looked for any sign of a secret boyfriend. Carrie kept telling them they were wrong. Amber had never missed a day of school. She had been counting down to this morning for a year. Nothing about this fit a runaway. It wasn't until investigators went through her room, her journal, her internet history, her books, that they finally accepted what her mother had been saying since the first phone call. Amber would not have left on her own. Somebody took her. Almost exactly 1 year later, and 10 miles south, Chelsea King's parents waited for their daughter to come home from her afternoon run. As the light faded and the temperature dropped, Chelsea's mother Kelly later described the feeling, the way the fear shifted slowly and terribly from "I need to get her home for dinner" to "I need to get her home alive." Chelsea's car was still parked at the trailhead. Her phone was inside. Her iPod was inside. Everything was exactly where she would have left it if she had just stepped out to run a few miles and expected to be back within the hour. She was not back.
One of the tour of the items and the area, because it's hard to visualize that area, and I took them on that tour on Sunday morning, midday.
2 days into the search, a neighbor walking a dog near the trail found Chelsea's socks and underwear lying in the center of the path. They were dry, even though it had rained hours earlier. The evidence was rushed to a forensic lab. Within days, the DNA results came back.
Identified Chelsea's DNA, so we knew it was Chelsea's underwear, and second, DNA from a previous sex offender, John Gardner.
2 profiles on that clothing. One was Chelsea's. The other belonged to a registered sex offender named John Albert Gardner III.
John Gardner is
A man who had served 5 years in prison for violently assaulting a 13-year-old girl, who had accumulated 168 violations of his parole conditions, and who had been living less than 2 miles from Amber Dubois' front door on the morning she never made it to school. He had been interviewed by police during the search for Amber. He had given an alibi. He was at work that day. They had believed him, and now 13 months later, 2 girls were gone. For 13 months, Carrie McGonigal did not stop. She ran Amber's website from a friend's couch. She printed mailers, organized walkathons, hired psychics, contacted investigators, chased down every tip that came in, and more than 1,500 tips came in from callers all over the country. She kept a map, she kept a journal, she kept going when everyone around her gently and then less gently suggested that she might need to prepare herself for the worst. But the investigation was fracturing everything around her. Within days of Amber's disappearance, police had focused their suspicion on Dave Cave, Carrie's longtime partner, the man Amber had called her stepfather, and the last person to see her alive. His day on February 13th made no sense. He hadn't gone to work. He hadn't answered the school's call about Amber's absence. He had shown up at Carrie's office in the middle of the afternoon with chocolate-covered strawberries and roses for Valentine's Day, a holiday he had never once celebrated in all the years they had been together. Then he went to see a movie alone. Then he came home and did his taxes and claimed he never checked the answering machine, even though Amber had perfect attendance and the school secretary had called to say she hadn't shown up.
At that point, I wasn't really speaking to Dave. I didn't want anything to do with him. And my mind just started racing, and I thought maybe he did something.
Carrie moved out. She took her younger daughter Allison and left the house she had shared with Dave for years. She was not certain he had done anything, but she was no longer certain he hadn't. Dave, who had raised Amber as his own child, was left alone as his scaffolding business collapsed, his savings ran out, and the woman he loved refused to come home. Amber's father Mo quit his job as an electrical engineer in Los Angeles and moved into a hotel near Escondido. He spent his savings financing the search. Most nights he ended with 2 or 3 hours of crying. He let himself do it in private so his volunteers wouldn't lose hope. 6 months in, with the tips drying up and the media moving on, Carrie's mother hired a specialist from Maine. A woman with a Labrador named Quincy trained for long-distance scent work. The dog followed Amber's trail from the family home up the freeway, 15 miles north to the remote Pala Indian Reservation. It made no sense to anyone but Carrie.
find out your daughter's remains have been found, it's a blur. I can't tell you how.
She had never taken Amber out there. Nobody had, which meant someone else had brought her there. The police were skeptical. Scent trails break down within 12 days. It had been 6 months. But Carrie stood on that hillside and felt something she had not felt in months. She told the team, "I believe she was brought here by whoever took her." Nobody moved forward, the search stalled, and the trail went cold again. Then on February 25th, 2010, Chelsea King disappeared. When Gardner was arrested 72 hours later, Carrie saw the news and recognized something immediately. Pale eyes, similar build, 10 miles from where Amber vanished. She'd been saying for over a year that it was a stranger. Her mind went to the same dark place it always did. Is it a serial killer? Investigators brought Gardner to headquarters. They placed a photograph of Chelsea on the table, left him alone in the room, and watched through the observation camera. He picked the photograph up, held it in front of his face, and said to the image of a dead 17-year-old girl, "You bitch, you ruined my life." They had their man. But then Gardner said something that stopped the detectives cold. Without being asked, unprompted, almost casual, he mentioned the name Amber Dubois. Said police were probably going to try to pin that on him too. They had not brought up Amber's name, not once. Meanwhile, Detective Dave Brown faced a different kind of race. The moment Gardner's name was confirmed, Brown had to get a photo lineup to Candace Moncayo, the college student in Colorado who had fought Gardner off on the same trail 2 months earlier.
I'd pick him before he lands on TV. Because if he lands on TV, then the defense will just say, well, she just recognized him from TV.
If she identified Gardner from the lineup before his face appeared on national television, her identification would be clean. If she saw him on TV first, any defense attorney would destroy it in court. Brown had 20 minutes. He got the lineup to her. She pointed to Gardner immediately. 20 minutes later, Gardner's face was on every screen in California. The DA had enough to charge Gardner with Chelsea's murder. She did not have enough for Amber's. No body, no physical evidence, no case. And Gardner knew it. He sat in his cell holding the only information that mattered to Carrie McGonigal. And he held it like a card he had no reason to play. If they sent him to death row, that information would die with him. Amber would never be found. Her family would carry the not knowing for the rest of their lives. For the first time in 13 months, something other than the truth appeared to be winning. Brent King made a statement that stripped the moment down to its bones. The Dubois family has been through unthinkable hell the past 14 months. We couldn't imagine the confession to Amber's murder never seeing the light of day, leaving an eternal question mark. They gave up the thing they wanted most, so that a family they had known for 6 days could have the one thing they needed most. The agreement was made in absolute secrecy. Nobody could know. Not the Dubois family, not the press, not anyone who might say something before they knew whether Gardner was telling the truth. That same night, Detective Dave Brown received a call. He was to go to the jail, pick up Gardner. Tell no one, drive north. They went in the dark. No announcement, no convoy, just Brown, a few officers, and a man in handcuffs directing them up Pala Temecula Road into the hills above Escondido. It was cold, it was foggy, the road narrowed into a dirt track. They got out of the car and walked the rest of the way on foot, sliding down a slope in the dark until Gardner stopped and pointed at a patch of disturbed earth on the side of the hill. Brown looked down at the ground. The soil in Pala is dense and red and hard. Even after more than a year, even through rain and wind and the slow work of seasons, the mark left by a shovel blade had held. It was still there, clear as a scar. He recognized where they were standing. It was less than 1 mile from the spot where Quincy the search dog had circled and barked 6 months into the search while everyone around Carrie had quietly shaken their heads. The dog had been right all along. Amber's remains were identified through dental records. When Carrie got the call, she said she already knew from the moment her phone rang. Late on a Saturday night, investigators brought her and Mo to the Escondido Police Department. There was a chaplain in the room, they told her. She said afterwards she couldn't remember exactly how she reacted, that when you receive news like that, it becomes a blur before you even finish hearing the words. But knowing was not enough. Carrie needed to understand. She needed to hear from Gardner directly what had happened during those 40 minutes in the car. Whether Amber had cried, whether she had asked for her mother, whether she had felt alone, the DA would not arrange a meeting. Gardner's attorneys blocked every request. So Carrie drove to the jail and waited outside the entrance. When Gardner's mother arrived to visit her son, Carrie stepped forward. The confrontation was brief and raw. Gardner's sister, watching from nearby, said quietly, we're sorry beyond what you even know."
Your son.
Excuse me.
Don't touch me. I'll
Don't
hit you.
touch it. I'm not. Stay away from her.
The next morning, Carrie received a call. Gardner had agreed to see her. She had been coached by the Escondido Police Department before she went in. Suppress the rage. Don't let him see the anger. If you show him how much power he has over you, you won't get what you came for. Carrie walked into that room with one purpose. She was going to ask the questions, and she was going to let him answer them. Gardner told her everything. He had been driving through the neighborhood with no plan when he spotted Amber on a side street she was not usually seen on. A route nobody had thought to search, with chain-link fences running along both sides and nowhere to turn. He pulled up beside her. He had a knife visible and told her he also had a gun. Amber looked at him in shock and asked if he was kidding. He yelled at her to get in the car. She never cried, not once during the entire 40-minute drive to Pala. She spent it asking him why. Why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? Over and over, demanding an explanation from a man holding a knife, while music played on the radio because she had asked him to turn it on so she could pretend for a moment that she was somewhere else. 14 years old. And she never stopped asking why. When Carrie walked out of that jail, she said something that surprised even her.
That I waited 13 months to have was like I could breathe finally.
On May 14th, 2010, John Albert Gardner III stood before Judge David Danielson in a San Diego courtroom wearing a Kelly green prison jumpsuit, his wrists shackled, his head bowed. The families of both girls had gathered. They had prepared what they wanted to say. They had been waiting for this room for a long time. Amber's mother went first. She stood in front of the man who had taken her daughter and looked directly at him.
You have taken a bright, shining star from this community and our world away, and for what purpose? To serve your sick, twisted, perverted mind. Today, justice is served. I do not hold the justice system guilty. I hold you guilty. Guilty for robbing each of us of these beautiful girls.
Cause your remaining days on this earth to be a living nightmare.
Chelsea's father, Brent, told Gardner that since the day of his arrest, he had refused to say his name out loud, had called him only monster, sociopath, serial killer, animal. Then he paused. He said those words in a way let Gardner off the hook. You knew what you were doing. Chelsea's mother, Kelly, had prepared a statement. Halfway through it, she stopped. She looked across the courtroom at the man who would not look up. She commanded,
But you did not destroy it. Look at me. Why am I not surprised?
The young woman who had been grabbed on the same trail, who had driven her elbow into Gardner's nose and run faster than she had ever run in her life. She walked to the front of that courtroom and told the judge she had come to stand as a witness for Chelsea and Amber to watch justice served for what he had done. Then she looked directly at Gardner and asked,
To ask him how his nose is.
Gardner's composure broke instantly. He turned to his attorney and mouthed, "She didn't hit me." The San Diego DA, who had been watching from across the room, saw the rage flash across his face and said afterward, just like that, the rage in his eyes, "That's the real Gardner." Judge Danielson sentenced him to 3 consecutive terms of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 25 years. Gardner had already waived his right to appeal as part of the plea agreement. There would be no appeals, no hearings, no parole board. He would grow old and die inside Mule Creek State Prison. He had said so himself in his own words, "I am the most dangerous type of sexual predator. I will kill. I need to be locked up forever." For once, what he wanted and what justice required were exactly the same thing. Somewhere along Palo Temecula Road, there is a tree. It stands at the turnoff to the dirt track where Amber was found, on the edge of the dry hills north of Escondido. For 11 years, people have been decorating it. Stuffed animals in spring, ribbons and flowers in summer. Seasonal arrangements as the months turn. It changes with every holiday, every anniversary, every February that comes around again. Detective Dave Brown drives past it every single day on his commute to and from work. He has watched it through every season since that dark, foggy night when he walked down that slope and saw the shovel marks still pressed into the red earth. He said years later that those things don't go away, no matter how many years you put between yourself and them. They don't go away for Carrie either. But she made a choice about what to do with what remained. After Gardner pleaded guilty, she went home. She found a puppy and named her Amber. She spent the years that followed building something from the wreckage of the search, Team Amber Rescue, a search and recovery operation that has since located dozens of missing teenagers, returning them to families sitting in the same dark room where Carrie once sat alone. In 2011, her dog found the remains of nursing student Michelle Lee, solving a case that investigators had been unable to crack for months. Each time, Carrie showed up with the same thing she had carried through all 13 months of her own search: the refusal to let anyone go through it without someone beside them. "I do it so other parents know they're not in this by themselves." Chelsea's law was signed by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger on September 9th, 2010, just 7 months after Chelsea died. The law requires lifetime sentences for the most serious child sex offenders and restricts paroled molesters from entering parks. In California, that level of punishment had previously been reserved only for murderers. In the decade that followed, more than 2,500 defendants were charged under its provisions. Chelsea's father, Brent, went on to launch Protect the Joy, a national organization dedicated to keeping children safe from sexual violence, gun harm, and abuse of every kind. Both girls have California highways named after them. The Amber Dubois Memorial Highway runs along Route 78 near the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. She loved animals. The Chelsea King Memorial Bridge crosses over Lake Hodges on Interstate 15, the lake with the trails where she ran for the last time. Two girls who never met each other. Two families who became, in the worst possible circumstances, something like each other's reason to keep going. And a woman who stood on a rainy street corner, pointed at two chain-link fences, and turned the place where her daughter was taken into the place where she chose to start. Carrie McGonigal said it best, and she said it simply.
Without Amber, there is no Chelsea, and without Chelsea, there is no Amber.